Okay, shall we start? So before moving to the fourth session, we just want to highlight that on your screen you see the graphic sum up of the third session. And of course, we thank you, the graphic designer that is supporting these 2 days of the annual conference. These presentations will be used, of course, for our dissemination and communication purposes, but they are also very nice to wrap up all the main conclusions. Now let's start with the fourth session, which is dedicated to the Shaping the Future, a dialogue on EU partnership in health. We will focus on how important are synergies for our partnership, but also for the other partnership in the health cluster. But we will go also outside our comfort zone. So, as you know, THCS is not looking to synergies with the other initiatives in the Horizon Europe health cluster, but also with the joint actions under the EU for Health programs and also other programs as well. In this session, we will have a first introduction from Katrin Kapfinger from the GRTD, Unit G4 on Mission and Partnerships. Then we will have an interactive panel discussion. We thank you all the panelists, in particular Magali Poineau from Innovative Health Initiatives, Joel Gronveld from ERA for Health, Ulrika Donmar from the JPI Antimicrobial Resistance Secretariat, and Giovanni Nicoletti from the Joint Action on a National Focal Point for the EU for Health program. This session will be moderated by Johan Hansen from NIVEL, which is also one of our Work Package 4 task leader. I thank you all the panelists and also Johan for moderating this session, and I enjoy you a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Laura, for the introduction. It's great to see you, everybody here, not only people from within the partnership, but also funded projects and sister initiatives, both in this room and online. As Laura mentioned, indeed, the focus of this session is on shaping the future, a dialogue on partnerships in health. And the term partnerships I would like to use in a very broad and fluent way. It's not only partnerships under the Horizon Europe framework program, but it's really partnerships, collaborations in the various natures. So we're also quite glad to have with us a representation of, for example, one of the joint actions and multiple joint actions in a way, because I think it's very important to establish linkages not only within DG RTD funded projects, but also with Santé, and also those maybe not present here today with DJ Grow, DJ Connect, etc., to really see, and maybe even also initiatives outside the European Union initiative. And in that sense, we use the term sister initiatives, and I really quite like that term because that already embraces the idea that we are a family with each other. And as a family, well, at least not as a dysfunctional family, hopefully, we also meet and connect with each other on a regular basis. We see how we can support each other, how we can improve our lives together. So in that sense, we're also a family of some who are a little bit more mature than others, some are younger. And that analogy, I think, really applies well to the excellent panel that we have today. So as our first speaker, I would like to introduce Katrin Kapfinger, who you could say is in a way head of the family, or at least supporting the family, because Katrin is part of the European Commission, DG RTD Unit G4, and as such, she's responsible of supporting and coordinating the partnerships and the missions, and she's team leader of the partnership team. So with that, I would like to introduce Katrin to the floor.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I don't know if I would see myself as the head of the family, but maybe the odd cousin out today, because I'm probably one of the few people in the room who's not an expert on health, but who's here to talk to take a step back and to talk about partnerships as an instrument. So to frame this session, I will talk a little bit about, I will go back to what the objectives of partnerships are, how the instrument has evolved, what kind of new ambitions we have under Horizon Europe. And I also brought some examples from other clusters, from other thematic areas on coordination or synergy actions that we've seen other partnerships develop. So before we dive in, I don't think I need to explain to you what partnerships are. Basically, they are mini programs. They are initiatives where the union and partners from the public and private sector come together, and we design and implement joint programs with basically three main objectives. We try to give strategic orientation to funding in line with major EU policy priorities. We try to create critical mass. So here with partnerships, we really try to create an instrument that is supposed to avoid fragmentation and duplication of R&I efforts at national levels and to achieve greater scale and impact than any one actor or partner could on their own. And we also try to foster vibrant and integrated ecosystems. So Horizon Europe introduced a new approach to European partnerships. They were not new as such. We're looking back, or we're celebrating this year the 20th anniversary of partnerships. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But Horizon Europe brought about some major reforms for the instrument as such. So some key features that we now have, we have some increased ambitions. So we try to do more with the partnerships. So we try to go beyond just funding joint calls to provide financial support to third parties, but we also try to foster additional integrative activities that go beyond that. Horizon Europe features a simplified architecture and toolbox. So we went from, I think it was 8 different implementation types to what we now have here on the slides, the 3 main implementation types, even though this is a little bit of a false marketing scheme because we have different subtypes under the umbrella term of institutionalized partnerships. Here it's also important to note or to mention that we also made significant efforts to rationalize the partnership landscape. So under Horizon Europe, we had just over 120 different partnerships initiatives that were running. And with Horizon Europe, we have consolidated that landscape into a portfolio of 60 that you'll see on one of my following slides. Horizon Europe has also introduced a common set of criteria for the entire life cycle of partnerships. So this includes their selection, their implementation, monitoring, as well as their phasing out. And here I would like to highlight one selection criterion in particular, which is on synergies and coherence. So at the point in time where we select thematic areas that we think are suitable for a partnerships approach, we already try to prepare them and design them in a way that they're supposed to foster synergies and coherence amongst each other, so within the partnerships portfolio, but also within the broader R&I landscape beyond partnerships. I also wanted to bring you this slide to highlight just how, let's say, important of an instrument partnerships are in the framework program. So here you have the budgetary commitments to the first set of European partnerships. This does not include the new partnerships that we will launch in the second half of Horizon Europe because their negotiations on their budgets are still ongoing. So this slide is just looking at the first 50 partnerships that were launched or that will be launched during the first half of Horizon Europe. So here we have just over 25 billion in commitments from Horizon Europe. This corresponds to over 25% of the framework program. So when we look at partnerships as an instrument, we really implement a large chunk of the framework program through partnerships. This also corresponds to 40% of Horizon Europe's Pillar 2. So they are, yes, again, a major implementation mode of targeted thematic initiatives that we foster. And with these 25 billion from Horizon Europe commitments, we had our partners match that with 36 billion in commitments so far. These are coming from public and private actors, so we also see partnerships as a major instrument to leverage investments outside of the framework program, which makes them, which basically makes them quite special when we look at other traditional work program tools that we have. So I apologize in advance for this slide. Everybody in the back is going to hate me, but you have your little. But I see that you have the screen, so maybe it's actually legible for the first time. So here you see the full portfolio of partnerships under Horizon Europe, and as I said, we will now have 60 in total, including the new partnerships that we have identified in the second strategic plan. So those you see framed in red, and what I want to basically illustrate with this slide is that if you zoom out, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with the partnerships in the health cluster, the landscape is actually still very broad. And we have a lot of, some clusters more than others, really implement a majority of their budget through partnerships. I also want to highlight very quickly the new governance framework that we have for partnerships, not so new anymore, within Horizon Europe, which is called the Strategic Coordinating Process. And this is really supposed to give us a better evidence base for policymaking when it comes to partnerships and a more strategic vision of the landscape, because as you've seen, with such a rich landscape, trying to keep an overview and trying to align and coordinate can be quite challenging. So we have introduced some specific tools or features in this governance framework to help us do exactly that. So we have, for instance, the Partnership Knowledge Hub, which is a dedicated forum where we coordinate or where we have strategic discussions with member states and associated countries specific to partnerships. So this is a dedicated space where we can dive into that. We have the biannual monitoring report, which has created a more harmonized monitoring and reporting framework for European partnerships that is more tailored to capture the added value that the partnerships bring that can maybe not always be captured in other monitoring exercises, such as the different evaluation exercises that Horizon Europe is subject to. And this is basically a biannual publication. We just published the second edition of it in September. They always have a theme. This year it was internationalization and strategic autonomy. The first version of the BMR actually had synergies as its major theme, so I invite you all to have a look at those publications if you're interested, as they feature quite a few interesting examples of synergies from the partnerships in these different areas. And last but not least, we have also started an annual tradition. We have an annual stakeholder forum that provides a venue for networking and engaging for the partnership community. And there we have also discussions and workshops and dedicated other formats to talk about hot topics in the partnerships landscape. The forum is taking place this year, next week, actually, on Wednesday and Thursday. So I hope that I will see some of you there. Now, talking a little bit, going a little bit into what synergies and collaborations between partnerships can look like. As I said, under Horizon Europe, we have a slightly increased ambition for partnerships and slightly increased expectations also of what we want the partnerships to do outside of funding research. And here, and I hope that the overview slide of the portfolio also drove that point home a little bit. With a portfolio like that, synergies are of course very important, and trying to avoid overlaps between all of the different thematic areas and sectors, or also partnerships that address more horizontal technologies, for instance, is really key to make sure that we foster a holistic and integrated approach, but as I said, avoid overlaps basically. So in terms of synergies, there's no top-down kind of blueprint that we impose from our side as the Commission. There's no one-size-fits-all solutions. As you know, partnerships are all quite specific in what they do and in the different thematic areas that they operate. So here there's really a lot of room for creativity and to identify the partnership-specific needs or opportunities. But some examples that I wanted to share today include, for instance, the Clean Planet Interpartnership Assembly. So this is an initiative that was started in 2022, where partnerships, and this originally started with partnerships from Cluster 5, but has now also been extended beyond Cluster 5 to include some partnerships from Cluster 4, for instance. So here, the partnerships in these clusters meet, I think it is every 6 months, and discuss their annual work programs and activities and align and take this opportunity to align their activities, basically. So this has been a very useful forum to align the actual activities of the partnerships. Then a little bit more concrete, you could say, we also have examples where partnerships have designed and implemented joint calls together. Here, here, I could use as an example, in Cluster 4, we have some co-program partnerships like Made in Europe and AI Data and Robotics that had joint calls, or the Batteries and Zero Emission Road Transport Partnership. So here we say that, here we see that sometimes partnerships that again cover or address specific horizontal technologies partner up with more thematically focused partnerships to build synergies, basically. Then there's also examples of partnerships that have engaged in specific collaborations with, for instance, regional actors or national actors. So there's the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, for instance, which has signed a number of memoranda of understanding with specific regional or national actors that had that have aeronautics or clean aviation as part of their specific. Of their smart specialization strategies. Yes, that is the term. So here the partnerships are collaborating directly with regions that oriented their R&I strategies towards the area and the activities that the partnership also covers. And then a slightly different example when it comes to member state coordination, which I thought might be interesting in the cluster that has a lot of public-public partnerships. There is the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research, the SCAR, which is not quite the same thing as the Program Committee, but this is basically a committee of member states that is dedicated to strategically discussing agricultural research matters, and this has included the partnerships. So the SCAR is very active when it comes to the selection and preparation of partnerships, and has really been a very important body to make sure that the activities of the partnerships are then also aligned with national strategies and vice versa. Now, just very quickly, because everybody, the hot topic right now is, of course, the next framework program. I wanted to give you a little bit of an outlook of what the future holds. And here I first have to say there's a lot of uncertainty still. Discussions on the next framework program are still very preliminary, and there's no consolidated Commission position on this yet. But we are, of course, reflecting on what the future of the instrument will look like. And here our reflections are centered around 4 main building blocks: the instrument design, the selection and portfolio building, the implementation of partnerships, and the life cycle. And here I just kind of I don't want to go into too much detail, but what I want to highlight here is that kind of overarching key themes when we think about the next framework program is our simplification and streamlining. So for partnerships, that means that in the future, we're going to try to build an even more strategic portfolio. We don't know what the funding landscape will look like if we're going to face further cuts to our budgets, but we might be faced with very strategic choices, or where we have to be very strategic about where we invest EU money to really achieve added value. So that is a bit where we're going for the future. And then I have a slide with further resources. In case you ever have any questions, we have a website where we have a lot of dedicated resources. I wanted to also highlight ERA Learn, which is a horizontal support platform for partnerships, where they have a lot of great, very practical hands-on resources on all things related to partnerships, including best practice examples of synergies, financial management, all of these things. And then if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to us in DG Research and Innovation, of course, as well. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine. Very insightful indeed to see the immense landscape that is out there. If we are a family, then clearly we're a very extended family, and probably it doesn't mean that we can have ties with everybody. But for example, one element I already learned, and one partnership I wasn't aware of with the head of Transforming Health Systems, was a partnership in culture and society, which was called Partnership on Social Transformation and Resilience. So this already shows that there is probably also within social sciences, within other scientific fields, there is work being done that we aren't aware of properly, which we should. So in that sense, I also take you up on the encouragement that we should collaborate beyond our own dimensions and really look very broadly. And in that sense, I also appreciate the work that the coordination team is doing to really enhance those collaborations. On that note, you mentioned indeed that there's no one-size-fits-all solution and no one-size-fits-all monitoring tool to evaluate all the partnerships. But I was curious. For those of us who were joined here yesterday, there was a clear and a very strong appeal from the European Patient Forum that patients should be more actively engaged in policy making, but also maybe in partnerships to evaluate whether they have a strong and meaningful role from the start. So the message from the European Patient Forum was we should have a barometer, a monitoring tool, which they are now developing to assess at member state level, but maybe also at the European level, how strong that voice is articulated. And of course, patients are a key stakeholder, but there's also other stakeholders like the regions, local governance. And while you said there's no one-size-fits-all solution, I was curious if you can say something about whether these types of stakeholders are their involvement is being monitored, and if that's not the case, should we also as a collective, as partnerships, think harder about how to monitor that to encourage ourselves to improve collaboration with them?
So as I was trying to say, with the biennial monitoring report, we have for the first time come up with a specific to partnerships, but horizontal or common for all of them, monitoring framework. And here it is obviously very difficult to try to come up with indicators that, can capture the specificities of or that can be common to all of the partnerships and try to capture their specificities. So we can't, at our level, we're not monitoring patient involvement, for instance, because as you can imagine, for other partnerships and other clusters, patients are not necessarily a target group, but maybe citizens or end users. But so we can't, in our monitoring framework, go into that level of detail. We're also always trying to keep the administrative burden on the partnerships and our partners as low as possible. But that, of course, doesn't prevent the partnerships themselves to come up within their own KPI framework, within their key performance indicator framework, with indicators to capture such specific dimensions or objectives. But yes, so we encourage that, of course, but it's a bit too granular for what we can monitor at the level of the instrument.
Well, thanks. I think that makes it also quite clear, and also given the broad scope that you have to cover, and maybe it's also an invitation for us, also in the panel discussion after the interventions from 4 panelists, to go a little bit further on that. We also invite each other and think for ourselves what this means, how to meaningfully improve stakeholder involvement, and what we can learn from each other. And in learning from each other, I'm quite happy that we're supported and joined by 4 initiatives here, which actually in some cases already collaborate very closely with THCS because they're part of the same institutes. But as sisters, I think all of them have a lot of insight, either at a mature stage or at an earlier stage from different perspectives. So I want to invite each of the 4 panelists to briefly show what their perspectives are and then open the discussion, also inviting the audience and the participants to join in on the conversation. So first, I'm glad to invite Magali Poineau, apologies, on behalf of the Innovative Health Initiative. As we all know, IHI is a very mature initiative already. It developed from IMI and before that from the European Technology Platform. So Magali will tell us a little bit about that and also the current activities that IHI does with her hat of being the head of the governance cell of IHI. With that, I give the floor to Magali.
Thank you very much, Jan. So it's a great pleasure for me to present you to the Innovative Health Initiative, as mentioned by Johan. So it's a quite old initiative if we consider IMI, the IMI Innovative Medicine Initiative that started in 2008. But as far as IHI is concerned, so we are celebrating our 3rd anniversary, so tomorrow. So it's a great step for us. So what is IHI? So in the past, you probably knew well IMI as this public-private partnership between the European Union and the pharmaceutical sector. But it has been clear during the second phase of IMI of the need of include all the industry sectors and not only focusing on the pharma industry, making sure that we also involve the digital sector, the AI sector, the diagnostic sector, the medtech sector. So that's the reason why for IHI it's been decided to have a partnership between the European Union and 5 different trade associations represented here. So we have FPI representing the pharmaceutical industry, COSIR, the medical imaging, radiotherapy, health and ICT industry sectors, MedTech Europe representing the medical technology industry, Vaccine Europe representing the vaccine industry, which is legally speaking part of FPI. And last but not least, because it's important not only to involve big actors, but to also involve smaller actors like the biotech industry. So that's the reason why we have Europa Bio as one of the active trade associations within IHI. In IHI, it's not only about involving the industry sectors, but it's also important for us to make sure that we involve different type of stakeholders, from the patient organization, the regulators, the HTAs, the healthcare provider and professional. And in answer to one of the questions of Johan, so we have a specific KPI measuring the level of involvement, as an example, of the patient at program level and at project level. So at program level, as an example, we have a patient representative in our scientific advisory board. We also have a patient pool and we ask this patient pool to be involved during the evaluation, during the project review, and during any of the activities where their participation would be useful, and especially when we design and we discuss with the Commission and industry on the type of topic we'd like to develop. But not least, of course, in most of our projects, we are requesting the applicant to involve patient representative because they are a key part of the research. Because IHI, it's about research. It's not about product development. It's an important element to always keep in mind, even if the title of this partnership is Innovative Health Initiative. The IHI is not about supporting product development, but it's really about accelerating the processes and the methodology, doing research and innovation, and developing tools that will help supporting, accelerating this research and innovation, and accelerating the access of the innovation by the patient, by the society, and their transposition in healthcare system. So this is more or less a summary of the different objectives of IHI. So on the green side, you have the specific objective of IHI, which aim at really translating our general objectives. So delivering self-effective health innovation that covers the entire spectrum of care. So we've seen that THCS is already covering a lot of this spectrum. We do as well, and there's a lot of overlap. We just tackle them from a different angle, and the question is clearly now how we can support each other in this objective. Because IHI is a public-private partnership, for sure, IHI has this objective to support and make the European health industry globally competitive. It's important. So we have to make sure that we support the healthcare system, but we have also to make sure that we support the health industry in Europe and staying it competitive. And last but not least, as I mentioned, making sure that all the innovations that are developed, notably within IHI, are translated in tangible solutions for the patient and for the society. So how do we do that? So similarly to THCS, so we launch call for proposals. So we are about to launch our 10th call for proposal under IHI, but we already had almost 15 under the first phase of IMI and more than around 25 under the second phase of IMI. So it's a long-lasting collaboration between the European Union, the private and the public partners. So our objective, as mentioned, so it's really to bring together different types type of stakeholders and different type of sectors. So we cannot work anymore in silo. We all agree on that. We all know that, but now we have to translate this into reality. So, and who can participate in terms of participation? Any organization can participate in call for proposal launched by IHI, but in terms of eligibility for funding, globally speaking, without entering into any legal details, only the organization established in the European Union, the member state and the country associated to Horizon Europe are eligible for funding. So this is the general principle. And under IMI, you might remember that the big company were not eligible at all for funding. Under IHI, with this objective of Horizon Europe to harmonize the approach, so any entities established in Europe, including the industry sector, they are eligible for funding, but for most of them, they have decided not to request funding and to participate in IHI with in-kind contribution only. So how do we achieve our objectives? So these are based on the first monitoring of our KPI. One of them is to be able to involve multiple healthcare stakeholders. So you can see that we are able to mobilize not only the pharma and the medtech or biotech industry sectors, the large company, but also we are able to mobilize the small and medium-sized enterprise. But as I mentioned, so 6% of our participation are represented by the patient and the civil society. So this is something we closely monitor. And I will give you now a very concrete example with the claim project. In our claim project, we have more than 15 types of stakeholders involved in our project. So representing different sectors, representing the public and the private side. So it's an important element. And this is something we systematically do care about each of our projects, and it's part also of the evaluation criteria in our call for proposal. So, and we are also able to involve several industry sectors. So IHI is now, the objective to make sure that we involve all together, all the different sectors, making sure that they work together and not only in silo. It's not only a question of having the private working on its side and the public working on its side, but from the private side, we have to make sure that they work together. And based on the first 20 projects already signed, so 19 of them, they involve all the different sectors represented in IHI. And this is also one of the key performance indicators we regularly monitor. So, but of interest for you also how our calls are generated. Of course, we have the Council regulation. We have designed, as you in THCS, a strategic research and innovation agenda. Based on this strategic research and innovation agenda, so we identify together with industry and the Commission different ideas for call topic. We consult with our scientific advisory body, which is a Science and Innovation Panel. We also consult with the group of member states and countries associated to Horizon Europe. And based on that, we design an annual work program and we'll launch our call. So you will see that in my last slide. So in January 2025, we will launch the 9th calls and the 10th call. The 9th call is a single stage call and the call 10 is a 2-stage call covering different area of expertise that would be of interest and where maybe we can see some synergy we could develop with the other sisters initiative and not only the European partnerships. So how does an IHI project look like? So let's be honest. So IHI is a big initiative. We are looking for ambitious and innovative projects. So most of our projects have a big consortium with a huge budget. They should be cross-sectoral, and of most important, they have to be pre-competitive. As I mentioned at the beginning, the objective of IHI is not to support the development of a product. but really to develop new methodology, new tools, new solutions that will help in speeding up the R&I process. So, and at the end, maybe we can have innovative solution or tool and devices that may be transposed in the healthcare system, but that's not the primary objective of IHI. And sometimes it's difficult for the community to understand this element. So looking at our portfolio, I won't spend too much time, but it's split by our different specific objectives. And you can see that if we look at the patient centricity or specific objective 3, so you can see that most of our projects involve patient organization or civil society in our project. And last but not least, so when talking about digital and AI, so there were 2 projects mentioned this morning of high interest. So you can see that most of our projects, so they systematically embed this element of digitalization and AI. So it's also our way to contribute to the digital strategy of the European Union. So, and of course, we look for synergy. It's not an easy exercise for different reasons. Why? First, because we do not have the same stakeholders involved in our initiatives. Second, because we do not have the same governance structure. So sometimes it's difficult to align in terms of timeline and definition of strategic research and innovation agenda and identification of ideas that would be subject to call for proposal. But definitely this is our objective, as this is the objective for THCS. And we will really work hard to make sure that we can have collaboration at different level, at program level and at project level. We also contribute, and this is one of our primary objectives, to contribute to various EU policy. So from the Pharma Strategy for Europe to the Green Deal strategy, AI strategy, but also to the concert mission. This is a huge portfolio and I will focus on that. So on the concert mission, so you can see here, we have listed the different projects that contribute to the concert mission. We have a huge portfolio in oncology, and it's really important for us to systematically align with what has been already done under H2020 and now under Horizon Europe, but also with in consultation with the other initiatives. So we have to complement each other. And we have to use the different funding, the different sources of funding from the private side and the public side in the right way. So in terms of investment, so in our case, we've already invested a lot of millions in our oncology, and you can see that the contribution both from industry and private being almost equal are quite important, and involving all our different private stakeholders, but also the different type of public organization, from the research organization, the patient organization, the healthcare provider and professional, and the regulators. The regulators are also playing a key role in IHI. They are also represented in our scientific advisory body. And last but not least, so we will be launching new funding opportunities in January 2025. So we will have a single stage call, which is a very open call, meaning that applicant will be requested to submit application that will answer to one of 4 specific objectives. So there is not a top-down approach, which is usually the approach under IHI. So our objective is now to propose 2 different ways of participation in IHI, and with the objective to make sure that we may consider all the ideas from the health scientific community. So, and this is on the top of the idea incubator we already have. So where anybody can submit an idea that will be assessed by our scientific advisory body and see whether this can be transposed in an IHI call for proposal, meaning that we have enough interest from the public sector and the private sector, because we have an important requirement that at least 45% of each of the budget of each proposal shall come from industry partners. So, and second, we have another call, the call 10, which will be a 2-stage call, where we will be focusing on the digital labeling, on the secondary use of data, contributing as such to the implementation of EHGS, and on PFAS, on how to reduce PFAS in different health areas, contributing as such to the Green Deal strategy. And I'm sure that some of you might be very interested in looking at this, and this might be a way also to collaborate between each other. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mangali, for this outline, and indeed IHI is quite well established, and also for those who look at the funding portal of IHI, the IHI 9 and 10 calls are already on the website for at least a pre-announcement. People will see that it's quite a large project, so that in a way maybe also being a convenient opportunity that THCS funds maybe smaller targeted projects while you fund larger projects. That might be a way to explore. Before moving to the next speaker, I do want to check there if there's any urgent questions that people in the audience have at this stage, and otherwise we'll pause them for later until the panel. Maybe the one question that I do have, because I think it is really quite important that we see how we can collaborate with each other. And you mentioned that the funding that you do and the strategic agenda setting is based on, with the support of two units, sort of the scientific advisory community and the member states. And I was wondering, should we jointly think also about some form, and align with what Catherine was saying, that there's some form of inter-partnership collaboration where we share draft calls with each other so that we see from each other, these are calls that are coming up. Of course, maybe we need to sign confidentiality agreements, but that would allow us to far earlier identify what are the calls that are very similar. And if they are similar, that might not be a problem per se, because duplication could also be following up on results that were done earlier. It can also be replication. So really how to encourage each other to learn from each other, and by sharing draft calls, would that be something to explore further, and also the later on in the panel. But now, for now, between IHI and THCS specifically.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think your last point is very important. So you're already aware in THCS, but at the initiative of the EP PairMed, the Personalized Medicine Partnership, so they have launched this first forum between all the European partnership in health, and we will have this second meeting in March, so that will be hosted by IHI. So in case representative from the other EU partnership haven't received this invitation, please come to me, because I would like to make sure that you receive this invitation and you participate to this discussion, and with the objective to see how we can align our strategic research and innovation agenda and how we can better communicate between each other.
Thank you. 11 March 25. It's in our agendas. With that, I would like to move to our next panelist, who is in a way part of the THCS family, but also now representing another sister initiative, ERA for Health. So with great pleasure, I want to give the floor to Joël Groeneveld, who is Dutch, so that's why it's easy for me to pronounce his name. But he's also the head of Research Mobility Institutional International Affairs at the Fonds de la Recherche Scientifique in Belgium, here in Brussels. Joël, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. I like the analogy of a family. And if we speak about family, then I might be that cousin that sleeps in very different houses of family members all the time, because the FNRS is a basic research funder from Belgium, and we have a strategy to participate in all European partnerships where we can fund basic research. So I participate in transforming healthcare system personally, but also in partnerships across the board, from the cluster 6, for example, as well. I participate in Water for All, Biodiversa Plus. So I'm quite knowledgeable about the partnerships and how they are set up. And I've been around for a while as well. And so ERA for Health is one of the partnerships that started quite early on in Horizon Europe. It aims to foster European collaborative research funding by creating a flexible funding body for joint programming in priority areas, addressing European public health needs, and it aims to set up Europe at the forefront of science and innovation in health research by 2050. This is, of course, a very ambitious agenda, but I can break that down for you as well, because ERA for Health has a number of strategic objectives. You can see them here as well. I will not read them all out, but I will speak a bit more about the history of ERA for Health. So in the previous framework program, there were a number of initiatives that were well established. So the so-called ERANet co-funds. You have the first one, ERA CVD, which was an ERANet co-fund on cardiovascular diseases. A second one, Euro Nanomed, which was an initiative on nanomedicine, in fact. And there were 3 of these. So Euro Nanomed has a very long history, and there were also several initiatives on healthy diet, healthy life, which were connected to the GPI at that time. And in fact, what ERA for Health does and wants to continue in this sense is to continue this cycle of launching calls, organizing the research community. It's also, as in transforming healthcare systems, these are a bit smaller projects that are, I think the size is quite similar. And so ERA for Health was developed to, first of all, continue this. This is what you can see in phase 1. But what is much more important within ERA for Health is the second phase, where ERA for Health is working towards at the moment. It is to launch calls on investigator-initiated clinical studies. And this is really something new, and this is something that ERA for Health really wants to work on and to launch and establish. So this phase 2 is being launched at the moment as we speak, and it should last for 9 years. And what is very important here is that in those previous initiatives, the funders, they find each other quite easily nowadays, mostly research funders, less innovation funders. But for this new phase, ERA for Health is really looking towards incorporating new funders that are willing to fund investigator-initiated clinical studies. And I spoke with the coordinator here for Health, and this is the main message that she would like to pass, is that this really they're looking for to broaden the horizon and to have new funders to make these new types of calls a success. So this is a bit more about the consortium. 37 partners from 24 countries, mostly European, but not only. As you can see, Taiwan is involved as well, Israel and Egypt. And otherwise mostly European countries. And the topics of the ERA for Health calls are a bit related to those initiatives that preceded them. Of course, the nanotechnologies, cardiovascular diseases, prevention and public health strategies, and also nutrition and lifestyle related diseases that come from the healthy diet, healthy life side of it. But there is also room for new topics within ERA for Health. It's really designed to tackle, in fact, all health problems that need to be researched. I will not really go into this neither, but this is the way the structure, the partnership is set up. As you can see, the pillar 2A and 2B is the heart of the partnership. This is so it's launching calls. In fact, this is really what they aim to do. First with the regular calls, which is 2A, and with already mentioned the investigator-initiated clinical studies. This is really something that will need to take off during the time to come. There are a number of transversal activities as well. I will not really go into that here neither, but we will see a little bit of that in the coming slides. So, as said already, launching calls. So, ERA for Health was launched in 2022. So 2 years on, there's already 4 calls that have been launched and that have been completed as well. So our first call on health equity, for a budget of, so there were 10 funded projects for 13 million euros. The second call, which was launched at the same time, in fact, was on cardiovascular diseases. So 17 funded projects for 19 million euros. Then a third call, which was launched last year and completed in September, on nutrition for the brain was the topic. Another 20 million euros that was put into this call. And finally, so the one on nanotechnologies was also launched last year and completed in September. So 2 years of Air for Health, and already 4 calls with an amount of approximately 60 million euros that is invested in health research. And this is really fresh from fresh news. So since last week, in fact, the first call on these clinical studies has been launched. It's called Effect Trial. You can, of course, find it on the website of ERA for Health. It's the topic of it is fostering pragmatic comparative effectiveness trials in non-communicable diseases. So this is more, the partners are different here a little bit. It's some of the remaining partners. Some partners have more difficulties participating in these calls. My research funder cannot participate in these calls. We only fund basic research, so unfortunately it will not be for us. And that is why ERA for Health is looking towards finding new partners for these calls as well. This call, nevertheless, already has a budget of 20 million euros. So there is already, but they really want to complete that. Clinical trials are expensive. They tend to last longer. So it's really important to open up the horizon to find more funders able to finance these kinds of calls. Yeah, and this is a little bit, so the one of the activities, of course, is to prepare this, because ERA for Health is not diving into this without prior knowledge. So there's a number of studies that have been done and that have already been, deliverables have been to, set up the landscape and to make, to find out who are these new partners that we can identify and that can join the consortium afterwards. Yeah, and like I said, that's one of the other activities where ERA for Health is really active is on responsible research and innovation. This is something that they want to integrate it into all aspects of the organization of the call. So it starts already at the evaluation. So in the panels, there are 2 experts on responsible research and innovation that participate in the panels and that comment the proposals that are submitted from this viewpoint. So within the proposal, there's a specific section where you need to reply to the different aspects of responsible research and innovation as well. And then afterwards, it goes on towards the monitoring as well. But it's something that is core to the whole setup of ERA for Health as well. Responsible research and innovation, every aspect is being taken into account in the partnership. And there are some other additional activities. So the Early Career Network, of course, and there's a Synergies working group as well. So also ERA for Health has already studied the partnership landscape from the partnership landscape and where there can be synergies. I think here as well, this is where Transforming Healthcare Systems and ERA for Health can come together and see where can we work together. So I think it's very important. And there are a number of partners as well, of course, that work and in Transforming Healthcare Systems and in ERA for Health. So here as well, there is room to work together and to find these synergies to be more efficient as well. Yeah, and on behalf of the partnership, I would like to thank you for giving the opportunity to explain a bit more about ERA for Health.
Thank you, Joël. I originally thought that Era for Health was very similar in terms of when it was set up, but I see it indeed when it comes from all these various era nets before. Then it also makes sense to me, and now I also understand why it has sort of these blood groups within it, different topic areas. It sounds almost like a sort of a political party where you can still see the history, but I think that's also logical. But it also reminded me, and what you said was the fact that you are based as a basic research funder, and I think it's important for us, but also audiences at home to realize that these partnerships often are comprised of different types of funding bodies, different types of bodies. Some are more into indeed applied sciences. Some are actually innovation funders, although I did hear your point that it's sometimes difficult to get innovation partners involved. So maybe that's also something we can learn from IHI. And there's also the more basic funders. So when we see calls, we also have to acknowledge and understand, and the point was made yesterday as well, that it's not always possible for people to join a call, for a country to join a call. But at the same time, maybe we can be creative. Maybe there's sort of a tag-along budget that you're not fully involved as Belgium in a call in Era for Health because it's not a basic science project, but you can learn maybe from others. That for the dissemination, you can still learn from other countries, so you don't need to reserve that budget. Mm-hmm. Would that be a scenario that could help also the Belgian case and also the Wallonian case to be involved in projects that are a little bit outside of the scope of your institute?
Yeah, I will not go too much in detail on the Belgian funding landscape, but we are small but numerous, and you just need to find the right actors as well in Belgium to be able to be able. But they are there. You just need to mobilize them. In fact, that is the main issue in Belgium. Yes.
So we had yesterday Dimitra telling us how complex the health system was. This morning was also reference to that. And if we then zoom in on the Belgian case, we realize it can even be more complicated. So thanks for that. With that, I also want to move to our next panelist, Ulrika Donhammer. She's joining from the Research Council from Sweden, but she's also a member of the Secretariat of the Joint Programming Initiative on AMR, which is currently running GPI, and part of the Secretariat of the One Health Antimicrobial Resistance Partnership, which is a partnership in development. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ulrika to the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, hello everybody. I am very glad to say as a first thing that this partnership is a new and upcoming one. We were actually this week invited by the Commission to start the grant agreement preparations. So we're really like on the threshold of launching this. But of course, it's been preceded by years of preparations and things like that. So I will give you an overview of the what this partnership is about, and I'm happy to take questions as well. So first, why do we have a partnership on antimicrobial resistance? And what are these issues? So antimicrobial resistance, some of you will know this, but to those that it's new, it's the ability of microorganisms to survive different substances that we use to kill them or to control them, stop their growing or stop them being infectious. And AMR is, of course, a medical issue. It's about diseases, but it's also a global challenge that is threatening the life and the health of people and animals, and also on a larger scale, the economic growth and food safety, sustainable development, because, of course, bacteria and viruses and fungi and parasites don't sort of respect borders. They sometimes don't care which species they're in. They just want to move on. So this is truly a very broad and dynamic issue, which brings us to the One Health concept, which is increasingly used in terms of tackling AMR. And the One Health means that you take a unifying approach and look at the health of people and animals and whole ecosystems, so including plants, including the planet as well, and recognizing that these are interlinked and they're interdependent, and you have to kind of recognize all these aspects. And within this partnership, we are focusing on the effects or the burden really of AMR on humans. As you see in the figure, the people are in the center. but also very much recognizing that the influence and the problems may have their roots and their solutions in other sectors. So you see everything from hospitals, the community, the public in general, and the food chain, livestock production, and the environment. So a few kind of brief key facts. This partnership was, it's a co-fund partnership, and it was included in the work program for Horizon Europe 23-24. And it, as we just heard, it sort of continues the legacy of the JPI AMR, the Joint Programming Initiative on AMR, which has been active since 2011 and launched, I think, 17 calls within that time, increasing, growing as a consortium, and is now around about 30 members. So we have a lot of history and a lot of experience that we build on. And it will be a 10-year program starting in the spring of 25, so very soon. And our kind of basic idea is that there will be annual calls for research and innovation projects, and then also calls directed towards research networks, towards mobility for researchers, capacity strengthening efforts, to also focus on the ecosystem of AMR research. I mean, there has to be good knowledge, but it also has to be people who produce that knowledge. And our vision is to reduce the burden of AMR by addressing the upcoming or the emergence and the spreads of AMR in humans and in animals and in the environment through this very integrated approach, and also by increasing the number of treatment options available. So our scientific priorities and our sort of process for arriving at how to prioritize within this very broad problematic challenge of AMR looks like this. So we have 5 thematic areas, the dark blue pillars there in the middle, and they are very classical AMR sort of target areas. You need to look at the therapeutics, of course. What drugs do we have to treat these infections? How do we diagnose infections quickly and specifically? The surveillance of resistant organisms. How many are they, and where do they cause problems? Also surveillance of the use of antimicrobial therapies. Of course, we need to know, because it's largely the drugs that drive the resistance, so we need to know how much drugs are used. Transmission and evolution, looking at the biology, how and where do bacteria become resistant, and how do they spread, and how do they share their genes with each other, in which environments do that happen. And then intervention, of course, what do we do? How do we design efficient ways of controlling this problematic issue? So these are sort of key areas, but then we have this round shape on the right hand side, recognizing that AMR is not one disease, it's not one problem, it's a very broad and multifaceted problem that also needs the influx of ideas and methodologies and perspectives from a variety of fields. So the social sciences have a lot to do here, and to contribute, and to take home as well. Health economics is obvious, but also behavioral sciences and a lot of different ways of understanding this challenge as well. Implementation science, of course, to form efficient interventions, for example, or introduce diagnostics and new procedures. Innovation is key. We need new and fresh ideas that come all the way to fruition in this area. And this is a global challenge. I mean, infections are everywhere where there's people and animals, and the burden is the heaviest on in the sort of global south, and that needs to be recognized as well in terms of resources and in terms of the problems that we address. So how do we combine all this? These are huge areas, and we need to focus. So we have 3 focus areas on the left-hand side of the screen, and they are a way to move from this plethora of problems into inclusive and real-world problems that we can address, and that will also attract the interest and the willingness to collaborate. So they kind of frame real-world challenges in terms of AMR. Preventing the emergence and spread, of course, is a very key issue. Prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of care, or what do you say? So, we really need to prevent infections. That's a very good way of stopping AMR. We need to strengthen the appropriate use of antimicrobials, and we need to strengthen infection prevention and control as well. And then, of course, provide treatment options. And these three areas will sort of guide both our selection of call topics, but also the direction of all the other activities that we will do in the partnership. So here is a figure of our implementation program. And you see on the right-hand side is the Research and Innovation Funding Program, which will be the strong engine of this partnership. We will fund basic research, will be the biggest thing here, I think, but also there will also be measures that can, calls that can be, that will be designed to fund also proof of concept or more applied approaches. And then we have three other work programs that are designed to support the sort of smart use and generation of data, research data, so that it's useful and reusable, and to try and move forward in terms of how we can use research data as a resource. We have one program for capacity strengthening. As I mentioned, the AMR issue is dependent on AMR researchers that have the skills and the capacities, and both the amount of researchers actually and their kind of and their capabilities. So we need the top researchers, but we also need a lot of researchers who can address this problem in all different contexts. And then we have an impact program designed for knowledge valorization, the uptake of results into policy, into products, of course, and also to end users, to practice, and whether that is veterinarians or general practitioners or people on the street or patient groups or whoever. This is a very open program that will take care of the needs for various groups. And as you see, these programs are all interlinked. The idea is that we identify knowledge gaps that we need to address, we design calls to address them, generate new knowledge, and then we take that knowledge back to where it's needed. And our consortium looks a little bit like this. So the Swedish Research Council will be the coordinator. There are 50 other partners, and they are national and regional research funding organizations, many of which have been part of the JPI AMR, so they are experienced funders in this area. And we also have a lot of organizations that bring expertise in various areas, technical expertise such as drug development and things like that, or more systems related things, so working with capacity strengthening in different contexts. And we are also very excited to have organizations that bring access or like an interface to civil society and to policy networks and things like that, because AMR is indeed a global issue. There's a lot happening on the global scale right now. The UN agencies are moving, the EU are moving, there's a lot of strategic plans and research priorities, and of course we have to align with all these and pull in the same direction. And yeah, here's a brief overview of all the countries that we are including. And there are also, in terms of synergizing and finding coherence in this big and dynamic field, we have relations going with the Commission and with EU agencies in the field related to health and medicines. Also with the UN agencies that are working actively with this, and they have like a joint collaboration called the Quadripartite Secretariat for One Health. And yes, some industry and policy partners there. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so shall I move on to my ideas about what we can share with other partnerships? Yeah. So what I was thinking is that, for example, one of the work packages that we have, which will be led by ZonMV in the Netherlands, they will focus on this data management, the usefulness and the reusefulness of research data. So they have quite a strong ambition here to develop a procedure and a framework and demonstrate how fair data can be analyzed and how they can be exploited, so we can sort of get added value out of how we manage the data. And this, I think, is if we develop this within this partnership, perhaps it can be useful for other actors as well. So this is something that we'll be happy to share experiences from as we become active. We also have one work package which will be led by DLR in Germany, and it will be dedicated to relations and synergies within the AMR field. And of course here a lot of partnerships and joint actions and public-private partnerships, and everybody is welcome, because AMR is really an issue that has smaller or larger, but interfaces with so many other areas. So we will reach out our hands to many of you. Of course, we're also, since AMR is a global issue and countries have been encouraged to have their own national action plans on AMR, there's also national funding and national priorities that we need to align with. So this is something that we are active in, of course, also to avoid duplication and try and reach the scaling potentials. That was my last thing, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ulrika. You may be the youngest sister in the family, but you definitely have the largest ground to cover. You have the health system, you have the environmental system, and you have the agricultural system. So by no means an easy task for you. So I do think we can learn also on how you will deal with the broad variety of stakeholders, but probably you may not be in a position to zoom in on each and every one of them to engage with them. So my one question now, before we also move to Giovanni Nicoletti, is basically, if you already have that broad scope, what should THS cover in terms of funding? We know that AMR is largely due to misuse and overuse of antimicrobiotics. Should we be the ones funding innovative solutions to prevent that, to reduce that, also to scale them up? Or should ERA for Health do that? But maybe that's outside of scope. Or will you already cover that? How would you see that?
Oh, yeah, that's a big question. No, but I can definitely see synergies, and that, as you say, we have this super broad scope, and within that there is, of course, room for detailed ideas as well. But I definitely see that we need to maybe sometimes pair with other things. I mean, listening during the morning here about the project about wound care, for example, which was very specific in one sort of clinical challenge, and then whether OHAMR can come onto the next level when there are already some conclusions, and then we can bring in an AMR perspective to that. Or we'll have to build on what's already there, I think.
Well, thank you. I think it's a nice example. Also, wound care it links a little bit also to the skills that professionals, that patient citizens need. Maybe we need to think about the term AMR literacy rather than health literacy alone, and that might also be a bit bridge with the joint action on health workforce to collaborate with. With that, that brings me to other types of partnerships, namely joint actions. And I'm quite glad that we also have Giovanni Nicoletti here, who's head of the unit of Department of Prevention and Communication at the Ministry of Health in Italy, which is also, by the way, the lead partner, the coordinator of THS. And he has been involved in EU projects for quite a long time. Also, for example, being the national contact point in Italy. And he will tell a little bit about that, but also, for example, a member of the Public Health Expert Group. So in that sense, if there's one person who understands and has to deal with synergies, not only within RTD funded projects, but also with Santé projects, I think it would be Giovanni. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Johan, and thanks to the organizer, first of all, for inviting me, I guess, for increasing the median age of the audience. But apart from that, it's challenging also to bring something which is outside the research community in this very important assembly. And I hope that I will try to provide some evidence that it makes sense. First of all, some kind of, as we mentioned, okay, we part due to my age, but also to some historical facts. I think we have to start a bit from where we were a few years ago, where some of you were still not here. So this is still speaking about families. This is due to the grandmother of the current ADEA. It was called the Executive Agency for Health and Consumer. So. Don't take care of when it's the date, but just to show that until a few years ago, not so many, in fact, there was a clear distinction, not only in terms of operational activity of the research program and the health program, but also in terms of conceptualization of the kinds of projects and also in terms of the stakeholders and beneficiaries. And now what we can say now at the moment that there is still a lot of complication, but the slide is cannot be updated because now this border, assuming that it was so clear at that time, it's not existing. It's something that slowly disappeared and get into a very different direction, and at least the stakeholders and the research community is strongly involved in the health program, not just as a beneficiary, but also as a provider of ideas and priorities. Based on that, and I think you all know these slides, which is not mine, it's from the Commission, the EU for Health program, which took the legacy of very small programs in the last 20 years, and now it's not a big program, but it's something that looks like a program and not just a contribution to the story like the previous one is completely embedded in the concept of synergy. So it's assuming that a number of other programs and areas will contribute to the definition not only of the program in itself, but also of the individual yearly work plans. And more than that, there will be the need for individual projects and actions to take care of all this environment outside. So it's up to us, first of all, it's up to the Commission, but it's also up to us, which are the member states implementers, to take care or try to get these synergies wherever we can find them. And it's clearly very... I am aware that I'm the last hurdle before the lunch and the closure of the meeting, so I will try to be very brief. But just for those who do not know the national focal points of the health program, it's a group of people which are nominated by the member state, which started several years ago, but in practice, they were in their first formal nomination only in the third health program, and now in the current program, they are included in a number of actions mentioned in the regulation, which are assisting health program implementation at national level, assisting dissemination of results, and provide information on the impact generated by the health program at the national level. To do this, the Commission decided to have a specific program, a specific project, which is a joint action, which, for those of you which are not familiar with the wording of the health program, joint action are projects where the partners are not self-selected like in any normal project, but are nominated by the Ministries of Health. So it's clear that will bring the institutions in the front line, and in particular, this particular joint action is even more particular because the partners are not only nominated, but are usually those that for the others are the nominators. So it's a bit strange animal to a certain extent. This includes in practice all the member states and the associated countries, all those countries which are not formally speaking part of this action have been involved in our activity to a certain extent. It also includes some countries like Ukraine, which have recently started to cooperate with the health program. We have not time to get into the details, just to show that in the organization, joint action include 4 horizontal work packages, which are mandatory, but we go to the core work packages, and in this joint action, as you can I hope you can read, there is a specific work package to support synergies, and this was led by our Austrian partners, but in practice, the scope of this work package was to create liaisons, in particular with the research program and the persons implementing the research program, the cluster health in particular, at the country level, but also other programs. Let me say that clearly not all member states have the same capability and the same ability to involve their counterparts, but in several countries, particularly in Italy, we have developed a strategy to try to be very synergic among the programs which support to a certain way health. And this is the basic of several actions. In particular, we have organized some joint events, which are not important for the events, but are important because it was an opportunity to work with a number of partners in the definition of the topics and also in the definition of the contents and in, say, taking home the messages. And as you can read, we have recently organized also a meeting together with THCS in Rome. But there is another story which is slightly more important, probably, that we have tried to be a sort of a member state service for some of the big projects of the health program. In particular, the big joint action. I think most of you know Jakarta, which is a joint action on cardiovascular diseases, which is one of the flagship initiatives of EU4Health Joint Action. It's over 50 million budget from European Commission. And Jakarta, which is also coordinated by an Italian organization, which is ISS, which is also one of our partners, is clearly not to say that they were in difficulties to find real players in the member states because they have maybe even too many, but they're asking us to support them to facilitate the contact with the key respondent for their baseline survey on the state of art of cardiovascular disease control in the individual countries. And I think this is also part of our job to respond to several of these requests coming from various projects. And we will have a new joint action next year because the current one is going to end beginning of 2025. The future one will be even more complex, despite the budget will be the same, but we will be a bit more ambitious in terms of trying to get contacts and beneficiaries more involved in our activities and not just to do something for ourselves, which was the basic element of the current program, or the current joint action. Going to the end, some potential synergies with THCS. So some of them are apparently very trivial because the coordination team of the two projects are in the same administration. So we are in two different directorates, which is not very, which is stimulating. I think you have seen yesterday a message from our head of department, which means that we are now in the same department. So it brings some institutional formalization to synergies that we nevertheless had from the very beginning, despite we had two different units. Also, some of our key partners, in particular, I want to thank Promise, which was one of the organizers of today's event, which is responsible for both of us, of the communication and many other activities. So it's very clear that we are facilitated by the fact that we have some partners that can play a double role. But getting to more concrete and let's say theoretical discussion. So I think our group should be a bit more support in terms of scientific support. And clearly your experience in terms of health system, it's something that could be an added value for us. We have excellent cooperation in public health and on prevention on several topics which are part of U4Health, but probably health system was a bit weaker, and it's a strong part of U4Health, but to a certain extent is not so fully developed as it could be. On the other hand, if you so wish, the example that I show from Jakarta could be also maybe a showcase for us to, if you so wish, to try to have a stronger contact with some part of the member states, because maybe you have strong contact with the funding agency, but a bit less with something or the policy maker or the implementers at national level. But these are very rough ideas, and I think it will be time for us to chat every day. Thank you very much for inviting, and look forward to meeting you again in other opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni. We actually do have a little bit of time before the closing of the session, so we can still take a number of questions, both for your presentation and also for the wider panel. Actually, on that last point, on the linkages with policy, I think it is also beneficial for us to know that opportunity exists. Within THCS, there's also a work package 5 actually, which is trying to build a toolbox to support evidence-informed policy making. So that I think once we are in the stage that we have that toolbox ready, of course, also learning from previous examples, including, for example, the European Observatory on Health Systems and Policies. We are happy to also share that. And the same goes for our transferability framework, which is developed in Work Packet 4, which I think is quite crucial for other initiatives. So on that note, maybe one practical question to Giovanni. You are the sort of the national contact point for E4Health and the health program funded by DG Santé. In some countries, I think it's sometimes the same institute that's also supporting for the Horizon Europe program, but in others it might be different institutes, different people. Should we have and try to get towards one central contact point who can guide our way in all of the health-related funding? It would be a harsh job, but I don't want to put that burden on you per se. But it would be, I could imagine it would be added value to have a more coordinated approach between the different DGs within the Commission.
That's the key question. I think that would be the dream of any beneficiary, to have a one-stop shop for health in any country. And it's exactly the scope of our future project is to increase, at least with the national contact points of cluster health, a sort of cooperation that goes beyond what we have already done to create common opportunities. And there is a very good reason. First of all, we have to admit that we are still speaking about the family. We are the little child and you are the big one. So it is important that the big one takes care of also the small child more than the other way around, and it works. On the other point, I think it's probably not in all the countries we can go directly to find an organizational solution which can solve any let's say synergy, but we should be aware of the problem, and we should be aware of the lack of these borders that were in the past, so that and try to suggest also to the European institutions to support and increase the synergy of the potential contacts person and even more of the organizations which are responsible for that.
Thank you. I think on that note, both the European Cancer Plan and the Mission on Cancer are an excellent example, which is a sort of a quite a new way of working between the Commission offices of DG Santé and DG RTD, and I really think that's quite a nice way forward, and the support of member states has always been quite crucial in that. With that, I do want to check if there's questions from the audience to any of the panelists or to them broadly. Also on how to make things concrete. We talk a little bit about we talk about synergies, and we mentioned the word a lot. And synergies actually means that we think about solutions and practical actions that can sort of make sure that we have enhanced products, enhanced sort of accomplishments that we wouldn't have if we work only by ourselves. So it really makes it important to think about concrete action. So I want to ask you if you in the audience have any suggestions on that, any particular questions or things that might help also the partnership forward. But that's also a question to the partnerships themselves. How can we move away from simply meeting each other annually, which is quite valuable and nice, but really come to maybe sort of concrete actions? Should we work towards joint monitoring, joint foresight, joint research agendas, joint training sessions? Would any of the panelists would like to reflect on that? Well, Joël, you're looking, I don't know if you're looking scared or happy to answer, but the floor is yours now.
Yeah, probably looking scared, but it's a vast question. I think for participating in numerous of these partnerships, you can see that there is a large overlap in the organizations that are participating. So from that viewpoint, it would really be beneficial to communicate more between the partnerships. I was intrigued as well by the first presentation from the European Commission, where some initiatives, and I saw this standing committee on agricultural research. Not sure if there might be a possibility to have something similar here as well, where these issues can be discussed. And I was very intrigued as well by the presentation of the Innovative Health Initiative, which works on a totally different scale, totally different stakeholders, but could be very complementary as well. And I today I discovered what you're doing, and this is I think something very important to exchange already these things much more.
Oh, I do agree. So you've mentioned how to move away from meeting each other, but we still realize that we are still discovering each other. So, and I'm not sure that we are all fully aware of what we are doing, how we implement it. As I mentioned during my presentation, so we have different governance. And sometimes it's a bit difficult to align between each other. So I think we should continue meeting each other, but most probably on a more regular basis. Second, I think your idea of promoting our respective funding opportunities to our respective community is really key. We should do that, and we may do that in different manners. So what we started at IHI, but it's a bit time and resource consuming. We have started organizing joint webinar. As an example, we did it with EITLs, we did it with EUREGA, which is the European network of HTA organization. We plan to do it with the Innovative SME Partnership. So maybe we can envisage something where we can alert and train our respective community of what is done by the other. And as such, they will be most probably in the position to see how we can complement each other. Just taking some example from the Innovative Health Initiative, we are developing some solution, some methodology. But how can this methodology be implemented not only in the industry processes, but also by the regional stakeholders? How this may be embedded by the regional and the national hubs? So this is one of our key barriers. We don't know how we can have this transposition, this translation.
Thank you. I hope that this session and also helps us, at least it helped me, to already see a little bit of what is already available. I saw, for example, when studying the Era for Health website, that there was, and Joël mentioned that, a young researchers network to encourage PhD students and postdocs to sort of strengthen their ties. And I think that's a really nice model that we also as THCS may want to consider, and maybe we can also join forces there. But also when I looked at the Joint Action website that Giovanni presented, I saw there's quite some material material already there on writing proposals, on how to, for example, prepare grants, including tools. And I think the point that you both made, namely to collect and share those information and see each other on a more regular basis in a standing committee or in an inter-partnership assembly, I think would already be quite a nice step. And if we move to, and that's the last point before we close also, to the project level. We saw this morning a number of projects, and there was quite some enthusiasm also from IHI on the last project, which was on digital health. And I could imagine that also people looking at home, they now see a landscape of opportunities, or we could apply for Era for Health, we can apply for IHI, we can apply for THCS. Maybe we need to think as partnerships how to avoid that everybody is applying to the same to different partnerships with slightly similar proposals. But at the same time, the fact that these projects are existing, we always think about cluster meetings maybe within a partnership. It might also be beneficial to have sort of these exchange meetings between projects among partnerships when they are working on a very similar field, also bringing in, for example, the One Health perspective. So I was wondering if in any of the partnerships that's already existing, or if you see opportunity to build that in.
First of all, because if I looked at the presentation of One Health AMR, you were also planning to work on young researchers, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, just an example as well that I learned this week. So I participate in a large number of partnerships, and I learned as well that this week that the Water for All, the partnership, will team up with Biodiversa Plus to have a common projects meeting. So that is very interesting as well, I think, on the health level as well, to perhaps organize joint seminaries as well, where the projects of transforming healthcare systems might get together with one of the other calls that is on a different topic, but there can be synergies. So that can be interesting as well.
Thanks. With that, we come to a close of this session, and then we move also to the wrap up of this 2-day event, which has been, I think, very fruitful for those who joined online, maybe part of the conversations or the entire event. I at least learned quite a lot of what initiatives are out there, also how to contribute to each other, and also how to find each other. So we have this saying, "No man is an island." I think the same goes for projects. No EU-funded project is an island. So we exchanged phone numbers, we exchanged insights, we exchanged information, and we see that it's important to do that on a regular basis to find each other, not only between partnerships, I think, but also at a local level between projects that are being funded. If you have a project, if you coordinate one, if you want to submit one, I think it's valuable to see what's already out there and to learn from existing initiatives. And we, in a way, as partnerships, have a role to support that, to facilitate that, and make that easier, to align with what you had been saying from IHI perspective, to really make sure that we deliver on the promise on improving Europe's innovation level. So with that, I want to thank you everybody for joining this session, and hand over to Lisa Leonardi from the coordination team to say a few words before we close.
Thank you very much. You are so good in moderating this session that my role now is very, very difficult. And I'm joking. I'm Lisa Leonardini, and I am the technical coordinator of PROMIS, Programma Mattone Internazionale Salute. This network, made up of all the Italian regions, the Ministry of Health, and over national health institutes, is an affiliated entity of the Ministry of Health, and as member of the coordinating team. So in this regard, in the name of all the coordinating team, I want to thank all the speakers, moderators, participants here in presence and online. And now I try to underline the key messages of all these 2 days. And this is a very ambitious role, but I try to make it also in very briefly time. For make this, I take some notes in my smartphone, so I try to share my point of view and share the results. In the first session, we have delved deeply into the transformation of health and care systems. We have explored key issues such as the crucial role of policymakers in their role in identifying and addressing health system challenges through the tools of innovation, research, and cooperation. Moreover, we have explored the strategic and essential role and involvement of citizens, in particular patients, and the indispensable role of the health workforce. This discussion have underscored the complexity and in the same time the urgency of the task and the incredible opportunities within our reach. The focus has to be the transformation throughout change management, co-programming, and new service organizational model. The need is to design a new organizational model with the strong involvement of the above-mentioned key stakeholder, using the instrument of research. The research has to serve the transformation. In the second session, we have also been privileged to hear from regions and their related ecosystem, whose testimonies demonstrate the pivotal role local and regional authorities can play in driving health system transformation. The example from the regional context remind us that these changes are not just theoretical, they are real, tangible, and already delivered real impact. Here the concept dear to us and dear in particular to me has been really put the research into practice. The first section has been dedicated to the presentation of the project from our first joint action international call 2023. As known, the JTS is the principal tool of all the partnership in Horizon Europe. We need to support intensively the life cycle course of funded project and to guarantee the real implementation of result at regional and local level. We need to be inspired by this project in order to build a sustainable future of health system. We have to find strong procedure to multiply, maximize the implementation of all the good results. And in the last section, we touched on the topic of synergies. And as my colleagues know, I really believe in the power of synergies. And in this regard, the THCS Partnership is actively working on building, sharing, implementing instruments useful both at the European national level for supporting the creation and the strengthening of the governance, really able to play a role of guidance in defining priority, investment, and, of course, development. Tools like the National Mirror Group, for example, in a framework of transdisciplinarity, are essential for fostering collaborative efforts that reflect diverse needs and encourage co-programming of initiative and investment, avoiding overlapping and waste of resources. I'm referring to natural, human, and economic resources. Hoping to have been really concise and to catch at least the principal messages, I would like to share some elements that, in my opinion, it is important to take carefully, both at European national level for the future development and implementation of partnership, innovative research and activity. We all together are working on developing research useful to create and maintain sustainable and resilient health system. This in very practical action means make processes more efficient, working on procedures, instrument and infrastructures. In this regard, we have taken into account framework, starting point, deliverables already available, already developed, for example, among others, the recent European strategy on global health, guidelines, practices, born in the framework of past and ongoing joint action on workforce, primary and secondary use of health data, cancer, integrated care, non-communicable disease, and others. Instrument set up in the framework of vertical projects. The Scirocco tool mentioned yesterday by DG Sante is an example. We are using the Scirocco tool in our daily activity in Italy. Health-related umbrella initiatives supported by other DGs of the European Commission. So some examples are the technical support instrument, just mentioned, of DG Reform, and its a specific flagship on digital skill of health workforce, integrated care, as well as hub for navigating funds and programming investments. The ongoing initiative, some really interesting partnership regarding the past Pact for Skills, supported by DG Ample and DG Regio. The ongoing initiatives regarding the long-term care connected to the related recommendation and the integrated care strategy supported by DG Ample with a strong involvement of the World Health Organization. Summarizing, we have to know very well what are we doing, what already exists, who are working on, evaluate the result and create additional research result that we have to put in the system at European level and at the national level in order to support our beneficiary to understand what happened among all these strong and great initiatives. We have to create a strong link among research and health services to communicate and to take the time to share, collect, study information and create concrete link. In this end, it is important the strong collaboration of all the key actors, European institutions included. It is important to take into account all these issues in preparing as well as in participating as potential beneficiary in the joint transnational calls of all the partnership. Okay, I stop myself and I thanks again all the participants, speakers and moderators, and I take this few seconds to inform you that we are exploring the possibility of hosting the next annual conference in Helsinki next year, and we would welcome your ideas on format, themes, experiences, and way to manage the conference in order to have more engagement from the participants. And once again, thank you to all and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.